Hello, and welcome to Bookspot. I'm Earl Wyenberg. This time, we'll continue our reading of The Rolling Stones by Robert Heinlein. Chapter 15 Inter Jovem et Martem Planetum Interposi. The great astronomer Kepler wrote, "Between Mars and Jupiter I put a planet." His successors devised a rule for planetary distances called Bode's Law, which seemed to require a planet at precisely 2 and 8/10 the distance from Sun to Earth, 2.8 astronomical units. On the first night of the new 19th century, the monk Giuseppe Piazzi discovered a new heavenly body. It was the asteroid Ceres, just where a planet should have been. It was large for an asteroid, the largest, in fact, diameter 485 miles. In the ensuing 200 years, hundreds and thousands more were discovered, down to the size of rocks. The asteroids proved a poor name. They were not little stars, nor were they precisely planetoids. It was early suggested that they were the remains of a once sizable planet, and by the middle of the 20th century, mathematical investigation of their orbits seemed to prove it. But it was not until the first men in the early days of the exploration of space actually went out to the lonely reaches between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter and looked that we learned for certain that the asteroids were indeed fragments of a greater planet, destroyed Lucifer, long dead brother of Earth. As the rolling stone rose higher and ever higher above the sun, she slowed, curved her path in, and approached the point where she would start to fall back toward the sun. She was then at the orbit of Ceres, and not far in front of that lady. The stone had been in the region of the asteroids for the past 50 million miles. The ruins of Lucifer are scattered over a wide belt of space. The Hallelujah node was near the middle of that belt. The loose group of rocks, sand, random molecules, and microplanets known as the Hallelujah node was traveling in company around the sun at a speed of 11 miles per second. The stone's vector was 8 miles per second and in the same direction. Captain Stone speeded up his ship to match in by a series of blasts during the last 2 days, conning by a radar beacon deep in the swarm and thereby sneaking up on the collection of floating masses at a low relative speed. The final blast that positioned them dead with the swarm was a mere love tap. The stone did but clear her throat, and she was one with the other rolling stones of space. Captain Stone took a last look into the double eyepiece of the stereo radar, swung the sweep control fore and aft and all around. The masses of the Hallelujah, indistinguishable from the background of stars by naked eye, hung in greatly exaggerated perspective in the false space of the stereo tank, while the true stars showed not at all. None of them displayed the crawling trail of relative motion. A point brighter than the rest glowed in a fluctuating pattern fairly close by and a few degrees out orbit. It was the radar beacon on which he had homed. It too seemed steady by stereo. He turned to Castor and said, "Take a Doppler on City Hall." "Just getting it, Captain." In a moment he added, "Relative about 10 miles an hour, 9.7 in a whisper, and just under 700 miles away." "Vector?" "Closing almost for it. We ought to slide past maybe 10, 15 miles south and in orbit." Roger Stone relaxed and grinned. "How's that for shooting? Your old man can still figure 'em, hey?" "Pretty good, Dad, considering." "Considering what?" "Considering you used Paul's figures." "When I figure out which one of us you're insulting, I'll answer that." He spoke to the mic. "All hands secure from maneuvers. Power room, report when secure. Edith, how soon can we have dinner?" "I'm wrapped up, son," Hazel reported. "About 30 minutes, dear," his wife answered. "A fine thing. A man slaves over a hot control board and then has to wait 30 minutes for dinner. What kind of a hotel is this?" "Yes, dear. By the way, I'm cutting your calorie ration again." "Mutiny! What would John Sterling do?" "Daddy's getting fat, Daddy's getting fat," Lowell chanted. "And strangle your child. Anybody want to come out with me while I set JATO units?" "I will, Daddy." "Meade, you're just trying to get out of helping with dinner." "I can spare her, dear." "Spare the child and spoil the fodder. Come to your fodder, baby." Not very funny, Daddy. I'm not getting paid for it either. Captain Stone went aft, whistling. The twins, as well as Meade, went out with him. They made quick work of setting JATO units, the young people locking them in place and the captain seeing to the wiring personally. They set a belt of them around the waist of the ship and matched pairs on the bow and quarter. Wired for triggering to the pilot radar, set at minimum range, they would give the ship a sharp nudge in the unlikely event that any object came toward them on a collision course at a relative speed high enough to be dangerous. Coming through the asteroid belt to their present location, deep in it, they had simply taken their chances. Although one is inclined to think of the belt as thick with sky junk, the statistical truth is that there is so enormously more space than rock that the chance of being hit is negligible. Inside a node, the situation was somewhat different, the concentration of mass being several hundred times as great as in the ordinary reaches of the belt. But most of the miners took no precautions even there, preferring to bet that this unending game of Russian roulette would always work out in their favor rather than go to the expense and trouble of setting up a meteor guard. This used up a few miners, but not often. The accident rate in Hallelujah Node was about the same as that of Mexico City. They went inside and found dinner ready. Call for you, Captain, announced Hazel. Already? City Hall. Told them you were out but would call back. 9.6 centimeters. Come eat your dinner, dear, while it's hot. You all go ahead. I won't be long. Nor was he. Dr. Stone looked inquiringly at him as he joined them. The mayor, he told her and the others, welcome to Rock City and all that sort of thing. Advised me that the Citizens Committee had set a speed limit of 100 miles an hour for ships, 500 miles an hour for scooters anywhere within 1,000 miles of City Hall. Hazel bristled. I suppose you told him what they could do with their speed limits. I did not. I apologized sweetly for having unwittingly offended on my approach and said that I would be over to pay my respects tomorrow or the next day. I thought Mars would have some elbow room, Hazel grumbled. It turned out to be nothing but scissor bills and panty waists and tax collectors. So we come on out to find the wide open spaces, and what's here? Traffic cops. My only son without the spunk to talk back to them. I think I'll go out to Saturn. I hear that Titan base is awfully chilly, her son answered without rancor. Why not Jupiter? Paul, flip the salt over this way, please. Jupiter, the position isn't favorable. Besides, I hear that Ganymede has more regulations than a girls' school. Mother, you are the only juvenile delinquent old enough for a geriatric clinic whom I have ever known. You know perfectly well that an artificial colony has to have regulations. An excuse for miniature Napoleons. The whole system is taken to wearing corsets. What's a corset? Inquired Lowell. A predecessor to the spacesuit, sort of. Lowell still looked puzzled. His mother said, Never mind, dear. When we get back, Mother will show you one in a museum. Captain Stone proposed that they all turn in right after supper. They had all run short on sleep during the maneuvering approach. I keep seeing spots before my eyes, he said, rubbing them, from staring into that tank. I think I'll sleep the clock around. Hazel started to answer when an alarm shrilled. He passed instantly from sleepy to alert. Object on collision course. Grab something, everybody. He clutched at a stanchion with one hand, gathered in Lowell with the other. But no shove from a firing JATO followed. Green, Hazel announced quietly. Whatever it isn't moving fast enough to hurt us. Chances favor a near miss anyway. Captain Stone took a deep breath. I hope you're right, but I've been on the short end of too many long shots to place much faith in statistics. I've been jumpy ever since we entered the belt. Meade went aft with the dirty dishes. She returned in a hurry, round eyed. Daddy, somebody's at the door. What? Meade, you're imagining things. No, I'm not. I heard him. Listen. Quiet, everyone. In the silence, they could hear the steady hiss of an air injector. The lock was cycling. Roger Stone lunged toward the airlock. He was stopped by a sharp warning from his mother. Son, hold it a second. What? Keep back from that door. She had her gun out at the ready. Huh? Don't be silly and put that thing away. It isn't charged anyhow. He won't know that. Whoever is coming in that lock, Dr. Stone said quietly. Mother Hazel, what are you nervous about? Can't you see? We've got a ship here with food in it, and oxy, and a certain amount of single H. This isn't Luna City. There are men out there who would be tempted. Dr. Stone did not answer, but turned to her husband. He hesitated only momentarily, then snapped, Go forward, dear. Take Lowell. Meade, you go along and lock the access hatch. Leave the ship's phones open. If you hear anything wrong, radio City Hall and tell them we're being hijacked. Move. He was already ducking into his stateroom and came out with his own gun. By the time the hatch to the control room had clanged shut, the airlock finished cycling, the four remaining waiting surrounding the airlock inner door. Shall we jump him, Dad? Castor whispered. No, just stay out of my line of fire. Slowly, the door swung open. A spacesuited figure crouched in the frame, its features indistinct in its helmet. It looked around, saw the guns trained on it, and spread both its hands open in front of it. What's the matter? A muffled voice said plaintively. I haven't done anything. Captain Stone could see that the man, besides being empty handed, carried no gun at his belt. He put his own away. Sorry, let me give you a hand with that helmet. The helmet revealed a middle aged, sandy haired man with mild eyes. What was the matter? He repeated. Nothing, nothing at all. We didn't know who was boarding us, and we were a bit nervous. My name's Stone, by the way. I'm master. Glad to know you, Captain Stone. I'm Shorty Devine. I'm glad to know you, Mr. Devine. Welcome aboard. Just Shorty. He looked around. Excuse me for busting in on you and scaring you, but I heard you had a doctor aboard. A real doctor, I mean, not one of those science Johnnies. We have. Gee, that's wonderful. The town hasn't had a real doctor since old Doc Schultz died, and I need one bad. Sorry, Paul, get your mother. I heard, dear, the speaker horn answered. Coming. The hatch opened and Dr. Stone came in. I'm the doctor, Mr. Devine. Dear, I'll use this room, I think. If you will all go somewhere else, please. The visitor said hastily, Oh, they needn't. I prefer to make examinations without an audience, she said firmly. But I didn't explain, ma'am, doctor. It isn't me, it's my partner. Oh, he broke his leg, got careless with two big pieces of core material and got his leg nipped between them. Broke it. I guess I didn't do too well by him, for he's a powerful sick man. Could you come right away, doctor? Certainly. Now, Edith, Castor, get my surgical kit, the black one. Will you help me suit up, dear? But Edith, it's all right, Captain. I got my scooter right outside. We're only 85, 90 miles away. We won't be gone long. Captain Stone sighed. I'm going with you. Will your scooter take three? Sure, sure. It's got Reynolds saddles. Set any balance you need. Take command, Hazel. Aye, aye, sir. They were gone all night, ship's time, rather than a short while. Hazel sat at the control board, tracking them all the way out, then watched and waited until she spotted them leaving and tracked them back. Devine, profuse with thanks, had breakfast with them. Just before he left, Lowell came into the saloon carrying fuzzy britches. Devine stopped with a bite on the way to his mouth and stared. A flat cat, or am I seeing things? Of course it is. Its name is Fuzzy Britches. It's a Martian. You bet it is. Say, do you mind if I pet her for a moment? Lowell looked him over suspiciously and granted the boon. The prospector held it like one who knows flat cats, cooed to it, stroked it. Now ain't that nice? Almost makes me wish I'd never left Mars. Not but what it's better here. He handed it back reluctantly, thanked them all around again, and left. Dr. Stone flexed her fingers. That's the first time I've done surgery in free fall since the old clinic days. I must review my techniques. My dear, you were magnificent, and Jock Dunaher is mighty lucky that you were nearby. Was he pretty bad, Mummy? Asked Meade. Quite, answered her father. You wouldn't enjoy the details, but your mother knew what to do and did it. I was a pretty fair scrub nose myself, if I do say so as shouldn't. You do say so, and you shouldn't, agreed Hazel. Roger, asked Dr. Stone, that thing they were living in, could it be operated as a ship? I doubt it, not the way they've got it rigged now. I wouldn't call it a ship, I'd call it a raft. What do they want to do with it when they leave? They probably don't want to leave. They'll probably die within hailing distance of Rock City, as Jock nearly did. I suppose they sell their high grade at Ceres by scooter, Circum Series, that is, or maybe they sell it here. But the whole town is migratory. They have to move sometime. Oh, I imagine you could move that hulk with a few JATO units if you were gentle about it and weren't in any hurry. I think I'd decompress it before I tried it, though. Chapter 16. Rock City. The asteroid belt is a flattened torus or donut in space encompassing 13,500,000 million trillion cubic miles. This very conservative figure is arrived at by casting out of the family the vagrant black sheep who wander in down to Mars and farther, even down close to the Sun itself, and by ignoring those which stray too far out and became slaves to mighty Jove, such as the Trojan asteroids, which made him a guard of honor 60 degrees ahead and behind him in orbit. Even those that swing too far north or south are excluded. An arbitrary limit of 6 degrees deviation from ecliptic has been assumed. So, 13,500 million trillion cubic miles. Yet the entire human race could be tucked into one corner of a single cubic mile. The average human body is about 2 cubic feet in bulk. Even Hazel's dauntless hero, Captain John Sterling, would be hard put to police such a beat. He would need to be twins, at least. Write the figure as 1.35 times 10 to the 25th cubic miles. That makes it easier to see, but no easier to grasp. At the time the Rolling Stone arrived among the Rolling Stones of Rock City, the belt had a population density of one human soul for every 2 billion trillion cubic miles. Read 2 times 10 to the 21st. About half of these 6,000 odd lived on the larger planetoids Ceres, Pallas, Vesta, Juno. One of the few pleasant surprises in the exploration of our system was the discovery that the largest asteroids were unbelievably dense and thus had respectable surface gravitations. Ceres, with a diameter of only 485 miles, had an average density 5 times that of Earth and a surface gravity about the same as Mars. These large planetoids are believed to be mainly core material of lost Lucifer, covered with a few miles of lighter debris. The other 3,000 inhabitants constitute the belt's floating population in a most literal sense. They live and work in freefall. Almost all of them are gathered into a half dozen loose communities working the nodes or clusters of the belt. The nodes are several hundred times as dense as the main body of the belt, if dense is the proper word. A transport for Ganymede could have plowed through the Hallelujah node in Rock City and never noticed, except by radar. The chance that such a liner would hit anything is extremely small. The miners worked the nodes for uranium, transuranics, and core materials, selling their high grade at the most conveniently positioned large asteroid and occasionally moving on to some other node. Before the strike in the Hallelujah, the group calling themselves Rock City had been working the Kaiser Wilhelm node behind Ceres in orbit, and at the good news, they moved, speeding up a trifle and passing in orbit of Ceres, a ragtag caravan nudged through the sky by scooters, chemical rocket engines, JATO units, and faith. Theirs was the only community well placed to migrate. Grogan's boys were in the same orbit, but in Heartbreak Node beyond the sun, half a billion miles away. New Joburg was not far away, but was working the node known as Reynolds number 2, which rode the Themis orbital pattern inconveniently far out. None of these cities in the sky was truly self supporting, nor perhaps would ever be. But the ravenous appetite of Earth's industries for power metal and for the even more valuable planetary core materials for such uses as jet throats and radiation shields, this insatiable demand for what the asteroids could yield made certain that the miners could swap what they had for what they needed. Yet in many ways they were almost self supporting. Uranium refined no further away than Ceres gave them heat and light and power. All of their vegetables and much of their protein came from their own hydroponic tanks and yeast vats. Single H and oxygen came from Ceres or Pallas. Wherever there is power and mass to manipulate, man can live. For almost 3 days, the Rolling Stone coasted slowly through Rock City. To the naked eye looking out a port, or even to a person standing outside on the hull, Rock City looked like any other stretch of space, empty, with a backdrop of stars. A sharp eyed person who knew the constellations well would have noticed far too many planets distorting the classic configurations. planets which did not limit their wanderings to the zodiac. This sharper attention would have spotted motion on the port of these planets, causing them to open out and draw aft from the direction the stone was heading. Just before lunch on the third day, Captain Stone slowed his ship still more and corrected her vector by firing a JATO unit. City Hall and several other shapes could be seen ahead. Later in the afternoon, he fired one more JATO unit, leaving the stone dead in space relative to City Hall and less than an eighth of a mile from it. He turned to the phone and called the mayor. Rolling Stone Luna, Captain Stone speaking. We've been watching you come in, Captain, came the voice of the mayor. Good, Mr. Fries. I'm going to try and get a line over to you. With luck, I'll be over to see you in half an hour or so. Using a line throwing gun? I'll send someone out to pick it up. No gun, worse luck. With the best of intentions, I forgot to stock one. Fries hesitated. Captain, pardon me, but are you in good practice for free fall suit work? Truthfully, no. Then let me send a boy across to put a line on you. No, no, I insist. Hazel, the captain, and the twins, suited up, went outside, and waited. They could make out a small figure on the ship across from them. The ship itself looked larger now, larger than the stone. City Hall was an obsolete space to space vessel, globular and perhaps 30 years old. Roger Stone surmised correctly that she had made a one way freighter trip after she was retired from a regular run. In close company with City Hall was a stubby cylinder. It was either smaller than the spherical ship or further away. Near it was an irregular mass impossible to make out. The sunlight on it was bright enough, but the unfilled black shadows gave no clear clues. All around them were other ships, or shapes close enough to be distinguished from the stars. Pollux estimated there must be 2 dozen within as many miles. While he watched, a scooter left a ship a mile or more away and headed toward City Hall. The figure they had seen launched himself across the gap. He seemed to swell. In half a minute he was close by, checking himself by the line he carried. He dropped to an easy landing near the bow of the stone. They went to meet him. Howdy, Captain. I'm Don Whitsett, Mr. Fry's bookkeeper. Howdy, Don. He introduced the others. The twins helped haul in the light messenger line and coil it. It was followed by a steel line, which Don Whitsett shackled to the ship. See you at the store, he said. So long. He launched himself back the way he came, carrying the coiled messenger line and not bothering with the line he had rigged. Pollux watched him draw away. I think I could do that. Just keep on thinking it, his father said, and loop yourself to that guideline. One leap took them easily across the abyss, provided one did not let one's loop twist around the guideline. Castor's loop did so. It braked him to a stop. He had to unsnarl it, then gain momentum again by swarming along the line hand to hand. Whitsett had gone inside, but he had recycled the lock and left it open for them. They went on in to be met there by the Honorable Jonathan Fries, mayor of Rock City. He was a small, bald, pot-bellied man with a sharp, merry look in his eye and a stylus tucked back of his ear. He shook hands with Roger Stone enthusiastically. Welcome, welcome. We're honored to have you with us, Mr. Mayor. You ought to have a key to the city or some such, dancing girls and brass bands. Roger shook his head. I'm an ex-mayor and a private traveler. Never mind the brass bands. But you'll take the dancing girls? I'm a married man. Thanks anyhow. If we had any dancing girls, I'd keep them for myself, and I'm a married man too. You certainly are. A plain, plump, but very jolly woman had floated up behind them. Yes, Martha. They completed the rest of the introductions. Mrs. Fries took Hazel in tow. The twins trailed along with the two men into the forward half of the globe. It was a storeroom and a shop. Racks had been fitted to the struts and thrust members. Goods and provisions of every sort were lashed or netted to them. Don Whitsett clung with his knees to a saddle in the middle of the room with a desk folded into his lap. In his reach were ledgers on lazy tongs and a rack of clips holding several hundred small account books. A miner floated in front of him. Several more were burrowing through the racks of merchandise. Seeing the display of everything a meteor miner could conceivably need, Pollux was glad that they had concentrated on luxury goods, then remembered with regret that they had precious little left to sell. The flat cats, before they were placed in freeze, had eaten so much that the family had been delving into their trade goods from caviar to Chicago sausage. He whispered to Castor, "I had no idea the competition would be so stiff." "Neither did I." A miner slithered up to Mr. Fry's. "One price, how about that centrifuge?" "Later, Sandy, I'm busy." Captain Stone protested. "Don't let me keep you from your customers." "Oh, Sandy hasn't got anything to do but wait. Right, Sandy? Shake hands with Captain Stone. It was his wife who fixed up old Jocko." "It was? Say, I'm mighty proud to know you, Captain. You're the best news we've had in quite a while." Sandy turned to Fries. "You better put him right on the committee." "I shall. I'm going to call a phone meeting this evening." "Just a moment," objected Roger Stone. "I'm just a visitor. I don't belong on your citizens committee." Fries shook his head. "You don't know what it means to our people to have a medical doctor with us again. The committee ain't any work, really. It's just to let you know we're glad that you've joined us. And we'll make Mrs. Stone, I mean Dr. Stone, a member if she wants it. She won't have time for it, though." Captain Stone was beginning to feel hemmed in. "Slow down. We expect to be leaving here come next Earth departure, and my wife is not now engaged in regular practice anyhow. We're on a pleasure trip." Fries looked worried. "You mean she won't attend the sick? But she operated on Jock Donaher." Stone was about to say that she positively would not under any circumstances take over a regular practice when he realized that he had very little voice in the matter. "She'll attend the sick. She's a doctor." "Good. But confound it, man, we didn't come here for that. She's on vacation." Fries nodded. "We'll see what we can work out to make it easy on her. We won't expect the lady to go hopping rocks the way Doc Schultz did. Get that, Sandy? We can't have every rock happy rat in the swarm hollering for the doctor every time he gets a sore finger. We want to get the word around that if a man gets sick or gets hurt, it's up to him and his neighbors to drag him to City Hall if he can possibly wear a suit. Tell Don draft me a proclamation." The miner nodded solemnly. "That's right, One Price." Sandy moved away. Fries went on, "Let's go back into the restaurant and see if Martha has some fresh coffee. I'd like to get your opinion on several civic matters." "Frankly, I couldn't possibly have opinions on your public affairs. Things are so different." "Oh, why don't I be truthful and admit I want to gossip about politics with another pro? I don't meet one every day. First, though, did you have any shopping in mind today? Anything you need? Tools, oxy, catalysts? Planning on doing any prospecting? And if so, do you have your gear?" "Nothing especial today, except one thing. We need to buy or, for preference, rent a scooter. We'd like to explore a bit." Fries shook his head. "Friend, I wish you hadn't asked me that. There's one thing I haven't got. All these sand rats booming in here from Mars and even from Luna, half of them with no equipment. They lease a scooter and a patent igloo and away they go, red hot to make their fortunes. Tell you what I can do, though. I've got more rocket motors and tanks coming in from Ceres 2 months from now. Don and I can weld you up one and have it ready to slap the motor in when the Firefly gets here." Roger Stone frowned. "With Earth departure only 5 months away, that's a long time to wait." "Well, we'll just have to see what we can scare up. Certainly, the new doctor is entitled to the best, and the doctor's family." "Say," a miner tapped him on the shoulder. "Say, storekeeper, I—" Fry's face darkened. "You can address me as Mr. Mayor." "Huh? And beat it. Can't you see I'm busy?" The man backed away. Fries fumed. "One Price, I'm known as to my friends and to my enemies from here to the Trojans. If he doesn't know that, he can call me by my title or take his trade elsewhere. Where was I? Oh, yes. You might try old Charlie." "Eh? Did you notice that big tank moored to City Hall? That's Charlie's hole. He's a crazy old coot, rock happy as they come, and he's a hermit by intention. Used to hang around the edge of the community, never mixing, but with this boom and 10 strangers swarming in for every familiar face, Charlie got timid and asked could he please tie in at Civic Center. I guess he was afraid someone would slit his throat and steal his hoorah's nest. Some of the boomers are a rough lot at that." "Sounds like some of the old timers on Luna. What about him?" "Oh, too much on my mind these days. It wanders. Charlie sort of runs a fourth hand shop, and I say that advisedly. He has stuff I won't handle. Every time a rock jumper dies or goes sunside, his useless plunder winds up in Charlie's hole. Now, I don't say he's got a scooter, though you might just lease his own now that he's moored in the city. But he might have parts that could be jury rigged. Are you handy with tools?" "Moderately, but I've got just the team for such a job." He looked around for the twins, finally spotted them pawing through merchandise. "Cass, Paul, come here." The storekeeper explained what he had in mind. Castor nodded. If it worked once, we'll fix it. That's the spirit. Now let's go test that coffee. Castor hung back. Dad, why don't Paul and I go over there and see what he's got? It'll save you time. Well, it's just a short jump, said Fries. Okay, but don't jump. Use your lines and follow the mooring line over. The twins left. Once in the airlock, Pollux started fuming. Stow it, said Cass. Dad just wants us to be careful. Yes, but why does he have to stay it where everybody can hear? So, the Stone family has reached the asteroid belt and met the mayor of the Hallelujah node, and things are rolling along for the Rolling Stones, and we will follow their adventures further next time.